Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 115. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist, and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction. Align yourself with the manifesting conditions and successfully attract your desires. I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the Google Play or Apple app stores. So today I have a very special guest with me, Daryl Hill. Daryl Hill is the CEO of Alchemy Enterprises and creator of Subconscious Architecture, a medically proven method testing using brain scans that show you how you're able to heal yourself from within. By creating his own system using magnetic meditations, people from all over the world send him testimonials of how their lives have changed for the better with relationships, money, health, and allowing his clients to break through their financial ceilings, fall in love after giving up, and finally let go of emotions that have been causing health challenges all the way to suicide. He's a graduate from the US Naval Academy, where he played football starting at Middle Linebacker for 3 years, and upon graduation served as an Infantry Officer in the US Marines for 13 years. It was during this time in his service that he lost 25 friends, mentors, and Marines to combat and suicide in about a 3-year period that left him on a lifelong journey of seeking help and mentoring others out of the darkness he had been in. And he can also be found on these websites, darylhill.com, his YouTube channel, as well as his Instagram, dhillUSMC, and Facebook, Daryl Hill. So today, Daryl is going to be sharing some of his insights on how to face your fears, break through your BS, and monetize your mind. So welcome to the show, Daryl.
Hey, thanks, Victoria. Appreciate that.
Thanks for being here. You're quite an accomplished gentleman, and it's really an honor to have you on this show. And I've kind of known you for many years, not personally, but just from afar. And so I just would like to hear a little bit more about your story and really share your story on, how you got started in this process. So if you could, let us know a little bit about your story of starting school and what was known as a mentally handicapped school, getting into a regular school and working your way to the success that you've now achieved today.
Well, I appreciate you being here and give the opportunity to speak to your audience. One of the things that I like to put out there is there's no disabilities. There's only super abilities that people have and discover. So a lot of times people have grown up around learning challenges, things of that nature, and they'll find themselves having to overcome those in certain ways. There was a gentleman I did some work with in the past, and he was a phenomenal copywriter, but he was blind. So he had to get really good at using words to describe and to sell people on why they wanted to do stuff to help him throughout his whole life. And now he's one of the best copywriters that's out there. Oops, there's my desk there. If you look at my buddy Steve Jones, and I did an interview with him, and I listened to kind of his story and where he came from. And it was so interesting. Here's Steve. He literally found himself shuffling through a bookstore when he was a teenager at his military school. And when he was there, he found this book on hypnosis and he started reading it. He went back to his dorm room, started working with people that were out there in his dorm. And it was kind of his way to help him come out of his shyness a little bit, and to put himself out there and start working, making friends, things of that nature. So a lot of times, you find people that say they have these, disabilities per se, but I look at those as those are the things that really make people great at what they do, and all the people I've talked to and been around, I'd say about half the entrepreneurs I've worked with as well have had some kind of like unquote learning disability, or they're dyslexic, or they do things backwards and things of that nature. And they always go against the grain, but that's what makes them great entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's so true. It's absolutely true. I mean, I grew up and I was the kid that was picked on and, all the way in elementary school, and I had a very low reading comprehension level. And so, I mean, I wouldn't call it like necessarily a disability, but definitely it was something that I struggled with, and it was confidence type of issues. So, you turn that into, I mean, if I didn't have the confidence issue, if I didn't struggle that way, I wouldn't have sought self-help. I wouldn't have been reading books like, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich and Total Self-Confidence, by Dr. Robert Anthony and things like that. So I absolutely believe in turning your weaknesses into those can also be your biggest strengths ultimately.
People have to actually learn how to adapt with all that.
Yeah, exactly. So you help a lot of entrepreneurs face their fears and break through their BS. And so tell us a little bit about how you go about that process.
Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly, the way it actually started, I didn't start doing it because I was looking to do it as a career. I had, like kind of mentioned in the intro, I didn't realize one day it was Memorial Day, and it's getting ready to, it was actually the night before. And I talked to some of my friends about hiking up this mountain in this place called Camp Pendleton, which is in California. It's a Marine Corps base. Mm-hmm. And, it's a decent sized mountain. It's not like hiking up somewhere huge in Colorado or something like that, but it's not a walk in the park either. So as I was sitting there thinking about it, I was thinking about how many friends of mine I had lost, and, in which ways, and all this kind of stuff, whatever's kind of going through my head a little bit. I just started writing everybody's names down. I got to like 25, and I was just like, wow. I was like, that really shocked me that many people had, and for me, it made a lot of sense why I suffered with like survivor's guilt, because I felt in a weird way like, hey, why am I here and they're not,
Yeah.
And that actually is really common amongst, especially like doctors that are out there. It's survivor's guilt is something that it involves like relationships that people have. They did something wrong and they feel bad about it afterwards, or even a car accident, like, hey, why did I survive and that other person didn't, type of thing. Especially if the person driving survived and the passenger didn't. So there's a lot of survivor's guilt that goes on with it. People actually realize it. And a lot of guilt goes on. Especially, I worked with a veteran not too long ago, and he had massive survivor's guilt because his best friend had shot himself in his basement. And that actually caused him to then kind of look inwards to, like, hey, what did I do wrong? And then he was, a lot of times people go to self-medication. They'll turn to things like drugs or alcohol to try to like numb out the pain. And a lot of times people say, well, go to see a psychiatrist, and all they really do is give them a pill that does the same thing as the alcohol does. It basically numbs out the pain, but because it's prescribed by a doctor, it's seen as okay. But all they're really doing is numbing out those emotions that are trapped in their mind at that point that they haven't dealt with. Right. So it was at this point, I was going through that stage of my life, and luckily enough, I came about meeting a gentleman. His name's Tom Kavanaugh, and Tom really changed my life and helped me kind of see the other side of that. And then he proceeded to like train me kind of like Luke Skywalker for about 3 years there. And I learned a lot from Tom, and he was an amazing teacher. The first thing he taught me was photo reading. And when I went through his photo reading course, it changed my life. It's something I highly suggest everybody do.
What is photo reading? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so photo reading is a 6-step process you basically take your mind through, and it's really reading at a subconscious level. So when you sit down and actually, take in a book, you're really taking in like whole pages of information, and then you'll access it in different ways. Sometimes if you actually, one of the steps in is you actually put questions down that you want to find out of the book or the material you're actually going through, and how you can actually apply it to life. So it's you're subconsciously programming your mind about why it is you're going to, read this book or find out information about it or whatever it is. So as you're going through and doing it, I'll literally like stop on the page and I'll be like, oh, okay, there's the answer I'm looking for. I'm just like flipping through this book and be like, oh, that's the answer, and then I'll read it really quick and I'll just go on to the next page.
That sounds amazing.
It is absolutely amazing. Tom still teaches it. So it's something I highly suggest. You could look them up, put them in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
And, it's one of those things where I probably went back after doing it, and I read about 150 books in about the next 6 months. And then previously I probably read, maybe 5 books my whole life, to include like school books too. I mean, like literally when I was in high school, I used to go try to watch the movies, Great Gatsby, whatever movie was playing or whatever it was. I always try to, or I talked to the kids in the class that got like the A's on the paper, and I'd ask them, hey, what was the book about? And kind of ask them or whatever, because I found when I was trying to read the information that I couldn't remember what I was reading. So it was very, very taxing. And a lot of kids made fun of me, like growing up as a kid and stuff like that for various reasons, stuff like that. But I found that like once I got the information and I knew it, like I would always remember it. Like I could still remember stuff from like years and years. And I have, abilities that they don't actually have,
Right.
So with my mom actually told me, I think when I was 33, this kind of goes back to the story you asked me about, was dealing with dyslexia. So,
Yeah.
And I didn't realize like, okay, well, that's what I've been dealing with my whole life, with why it's harder for me to sit down and read a book, versus like other people, So I went through that whole system. And then Tom was actually a wounded learner as well. So when he went through and taught me that, it was very much, he was able to incorporate a lot of NLP stuff he actually knows into teaching, and as well as hypnosis. So it really kind of like teaching you at a deeper state. And I found that I'm still able to use that process today to read books and take in information. And it almost kind of feels like cheating in a way. I've been doing my whole life the opposite way, and now having that ability, it's really cool. Since then, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bookshelves basically in my room right now, in my office, all filled out with books. And it's been a game changer for me. So after I did that process and working through that stuff with him, it was about a 3-year period. I learned how to do. He taught me a lot of things he knew how to do. And then I ended up reading even more books. And because when you become a photo reader, it's like everything's at your fingertips at that point. So I mean, Tom, he still blows me away because he reads like 10 books in an hour or something like that,
Oh my goodness. Now, how many can you read in an hour?
I just feel like, well, I just do one, I'm happy with one. He's amazing. So as I'm sitting there going through this whole thing, and I remember watching him one morning as he did it, and I was like, it just like blows me away. But, when you're able to read like one book on a subject, you kind of know the subject, but you read 10 books on a subject, you recognize about 10% of the information is somewhat like different. It's kind of like the author's opinion. And then you get about 50 books on the same subject, and then you become the expert on the subject.
Yeah.
Because now it's like,
goodness. That's exciting. I want to learn. I want to check into that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe, reading is definitely one of the big keys to success. So it sounds like, obviously if you can find a way to speed up that process, then you can speed up the process of attaining, success.
It's really becoming mastery and just creating your own thing that kind of comes from within. And that's really what I eventually did was I took the framework of what NLP teaches you. I took the framework of hypnosis, framework of timeline therapy, and a lot of these greats, and I read all their work. And then I found myself, I have this innate way of like with storytelling, of being able to kind of sit down and tell metaphorical stories into somebody in a deep state of, help them put it into a deeper state. So then they can actually make that change like automatically, and they just flip out of it. Sometimes
so kind of an Ericksonian style of hypnosis a little bit.
Yeah, very much similar to Milton Erickson. So with the way he actually did things, I've studied I can't say all his work because I know it's a lot of work out there, but I've studied a lot of his work, and I have his like 4 volumes on the purple books, kind of famously referred to his work. And Tom has actually studied a lot of, I think he's done all of his work. I mean, any source he gets in on doing it. So I took all of that, I really put it into the stuff also I learned from Tom, and kind of came up with my own sauce with helping people. So a lot of times I can do things that I've sit down people I've spent 20 years trying to get rid of, or 50 years, and then within 20 to 30 minutes to get to the point and help them get past whatever that thing was, and then they can't remember what their problem was in the first place, is often the reason why I have them, when I first start, asking them to write down what the problem is, because when we get done, I have them look at it, and then kind of validates that they don't have that problem anymore, where they're looking at that because they're like, well, that's not me anymore. So it's very, very much a part of when I'm sitting down working with the client per se. So yeah, just getting involved and doing that. It's been game changing, helping a lot of people, just all different walks of life. I had to kind of go through my own journey, my own darkness per se, to kind of get to that point. And it's been quite an experience.
That is incredible. That is, I mean, that's an amazing skill that you've created and that you've put together, and the journey that it took for you to get there. It's, it's a really unique gift that you have to offer to entrepreneurs, to help them to really sit down and identify the problem, but then break through things that people have been struggling with for, like you said, 20 years. That's incredible. It's an incredible gift. So you talk about this concept of monetizing your mind. How does monetizing your mind work?
Mm-hmm. Often it's like, in a way, people a lot of times will focus on the problems in life,
Mm-hmm.
and like what the problem is. But if you
Mm-hmm.
just flip that on its head, you'll realize that's the solution to making a fortune for yourself and whatever that thing is. So oftentimes people will come to me and they'll be stuck on something, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't see why they can't get past it. It's like they're on one side of the mountain and they can't see why they can't get to the other side, but they just need to walk over the mountain, and oftentimes they'll just stare at the mountain and be like, there's a mountain in the way. Like, okay, well, why don't you just fly over the mountain? So a lot of times working with clients, and what happens is they've either fallen down the mountain before, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were on top of, and they have a fear of going up the mountain because it hurt so bad last time they fell down. So subconsciously, in a way, their mind will figure out ways about how to keep them from even going up the mountain again, where it'll keep them from actually having success again, or finding love in their life again. Or there would be instances where I had a client I worked with in the past, and this individual had been sexually abused, really bad, and because of that, they had trouble putting themselves out there, and somebody came to me because they're having trouble like marketing themselves, and they couldn't figure out why. But when we sat down and actually examined it and did kind of the deep dive, after we were done the process that I walk people through, the cool part about when I work with somebody is I tell them I don't want to know what your problem is. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you like even to say what it is out loud, even, because I don't want to know, because it's based on the context of instead of the content. See, most
Mm-hmm.
people, they sit down and they just like throw up on somebody, and
Mm-hmm.
that's content, where they're
Yeah.
just talking like they go to a therapist. I said, I'm not a therapist. I was like, you can go pay somebody $45 an hour, whatever, go down the hall. That's not me. You're coming to me because you want me to talk to you and get you through whatever this thing is. And that's
Yeah.
what we do. So then when we get done, I always ask the person, I was like, okay, I was like, how do you feel now? And I have them write this stuff down so they can kind of test themselves. And they always say, fine or better, or now 1 out of 10 or whatever their, scale is for themselves. And I'll, as I walk them through that process, and we get to the end of it, I'll ask them, I was like, hey, listen, this is a safe place. You can share what's going on or what went on that was bothering you, that to actually share with me to know if you got through that. And most of the time they share with whatever that thing is, because then it's like, oh my God, I really am through this, because
Yeah.
most times people can't even they can't even say it out loud, even at the beginning, because it was so traumatic. And I find that one of the things about it, and I'm very, kind of very mixed emotions with the way they do a lot of the therapy for the veterans that are out there, is because they bring these guys, combat veterans, they bring them all together. They try to get them to talk about this stuff all the time. Well, let's talk about that. Well,
Right.
Every time somebody actually talks about any of these past emotions they dealt with or things from the past, they're actually, their mind, so you have no concept of time from yesterday to tomorrow, right? Or even right now. It's like, you're dealing with the mind, and without that time frame, the veteran then relives that experience all over again. So that the trauma comes up again, especially if you're dealing with traumatic instances where explosions happen, or, they saw somebody die, or they lost somebody, and this is the same thing for somebody who's a civilian out there, a police officer that sees stuff all the time on the road. And it's horrible what they do to these police officers. It really is. I mean, they put these guys through all this stuff, and they're state troopers. They're the first ones on the scene at the accident, and they're pulling, dead bodies out of a car, and they're dealing with that. And if they can't handle it, they basically fire them. I was sitting down with a state trooper talking to him about it. I'm like, wow, how do you guys deal with that? You look at people in the shock trauma, nurses that are out there, and the doctors dealing with this stuff. And I talked to a friend of mine last week. He's a Navy SEAL, and he's a doctor in the ER now. And he was telling me how, this COVID thing has happened, and he's lost some, patients to it, and some problems and stuff. And he's like, man, this is real. This is a real deal. I'm going through it. I see this all the time, dealing with it. And I'm just kind of like, I can tell, like, he's dealing with PTSD stuff. So what I'm getting at, especially getting back to like the survivor's guilt, is then basically the body, in a way, it kind of builds up almost like the shield, and over time it just builds up, but eventually it just snaps, and it's just too much, and the person can't handle it anymore. So the body actually will break down, and the body will break down, whether it's physically or emotionally, or they'll just get checked out in a relationship, or they'll switch to drugs or alcohol or some other addiction that's not healthy.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I really like what you're saying here. I like what I'm hearing, because number one, it sounds like, somebody could just come in and work with you, and it's completely content free. So you're not having to hash up your past and your emotions and get into all that stuff. And you're right, coming from, what I teach, with the law of attraction. I mean, the subconscious mind doesn't really know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So when you're talking about something, you're conjuring up those old ideas, or new, and it's as if it's happening right now. So it just sets itself up to have to find a way to keep that true, to continue to reinforce and make that true. So you're doing some great work by having them not have to go through and relive all of that, and create a new life. And then at the same time, though, get the confirmation, because you have them write it down and set it aside, and go through the metaphorical process with them. And so it's amazing. I'm really, really impressed with what you're sharing. So it's really amazing work. So you do this work with veterans. This is also some work. Can you tell us just a little bit about the work that you do with veterans?
Yeah, a veteran is it's interesting, because the subconscious mind is the same across the board, whether it's for a veteran that's out there who's dealing with some kind of PTSD from the military. And I find that oftentimes, and this is the case as well as other areas. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. So for a recent veteran who I just got a text back from was amazing. I haven't talked to him, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, maybe last summer. It's been a little bit of time, and he sent me a text telling me like how his life's completely changed. He's actually back in school now. Everything's going really well. Him and his son are doing well. His life's like in a great place. And this is the guy that first time I talked to him, his stepdad had me talk to him, reach out to him that night. It was like 11 o'clock at night. He's got a gun in his hand, ready to tell. He called the VA that day, told him he was going to shoot himself, and that was going to be it for him. So to be able to kind of have that impact, to step in and help kind of guide him and get his mind right and get him on the right track, and and you're spiritual or not, I don't really care, but this is something that was really hit me hard, because I'm pretty spiritual, is I'm sitting there, I'm listening to him, and he was describing to me a little bit about what was going on and what unit he served with. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, what's your platoon commander, Blacksmith, he's another officer who I actually was on the same football team in college. So we actually played on the same football team. And a lot of the reason, that this came out was because that was his platoon commander who got killed with him while he was over in Fallujah, basically, and that was like one of my friends that like, got killed. So it's just kind of like full circle to be there, like helping him now at this point and kind of guide him that like, he had suffered a lot of guilt from what had happened when he was like overseas and things of that nature. The thing about a lot of military, and I think especially the Marines, is that a lot of times people will get into the military because they've had something happen to them before that was traumatic. They had an instance where possibly they kind of wanted to stand up, or maybe they stand up to like the bully, or to be like challenge themselves to like be part of something like bigger than themselves. Because if you ask, like you go across the board and ask a bunch of Marines like why they all joined, the commonality between them is very much to be challenged. And a lot of these guys came from like a broken household as well. There was some kind of traumatic thing that happened that they were possibly wanted to like defend, so it's this very much like defender type mentality that I think is more prevalent. And, it's very much not to be like arrogant, but it's very much like we have the feeling that we're the best and you can't beat us.
And
it serves you very well when you're an 18 to 22-year-old, because that's 75% of the guys are getting shot at, when you're that age, and you feel like you're Superman,
right?
Because your buddies are there and you're going into battle and you're going to do, you don't know what's behind that door, so you have to feel that way, and you have that almost arrogance about yourself that you're going to go through, you're going to make it out, so that manifestation stuff that, you guys talk about is like, all right, these guys practice that stuff like every day. Like they go through and practices clearing rooms and clearing houses and being out there in combat situations and calling in fire and doing all this stuff. So when the proverbial shit hits the fan per se, right? Then all of a sudden, all that training kicks in, so that's the subconscious side. All of a sudden it's like, oh, they're just reacting,
Yeah. So they're doing visualization, they're doing mental rehearsal. They're already like programming themselves to, to see the end result, how they want it. And, once you have the end result, no matter what it is, I guess, if you're in combat or, you're losing weight, or you're meeting the level of your life, or becoming a successful entrepreneur, once you have a very clear result and you've rehearsed that and you've seen yourself, achieving that, I mean, the body kind of just knows what to do. The subconscious mind helps to create all the circumstances and situations and conditions needed in order to bring about that result once you get that firmly into your subconscious mind.
Yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps boot camp is the best hypnosis session you could ever ask for, because you can take an 18-year-old kid off the street with no military background and not know how to shoot, not how to do anything, and then 90 days later, and he's one of the most lethal weapons on the planet. I mean, it's just, that's what they do. I mean, they teach these guys through that, and it's very much like, taking them through one long hypnosis session.
Yeah. Now, so for those of us who are way past that point and in our lives where we could even qualify to get into the military, what would you suggest would be the next best way for a person to program themselves, that, to be able to have the success that they want, or to be able to find the love of their life, or to be able to get in the best health?
A lot of it, stop looking outwards and start looking inwards. So many times people are looking outwards for some special book or this course or like all this stuff that's out there, and I offer those things, and I know you do as well, but I just find that if you just unplug from all the noise that's out there, like put your phone down for the day. Don't pick up Netflix that day, right? Unplug your TV, right? Go out in nature for the day and just sit there. Go by yourself and don't be on the phone and don't be distracted with anything else. I mean, don't bring your dog or animal. Just go sit in nature somewhere and just think, really, and like look internally, like what is it that's stopping me from having what it is that I choose to have in my life, and just sitting there and just being present. And I found that, especially in today's society, everybody's quick to pick up the phone or call somebody or get distracted with something else, instead of actually doing that inner journey work with going inwards to find out, okay, what's really going on with me right now? Like, why am I getting upset? Why am I letting that bother me anymore? Right? Why am I not in the relationship that I really should be in? Right? And then just sitting there and asking yourself those questions and just see what your mind tells you, because it wants to talk to you. But every time that you use this, and there's people that use like different distraction mechanisms. I've seen people that they'll spend so much time working on everybody else that they don't bother working on themselves.
So true.
And those fun, like somebody like Robin Williams spent his whole career trying to make everybody else laugh when he was crying on the inside. And then he goes commit suicide. So it's like you have these people that are out there. It's just stop and like look inside yourself. I think you actually even talked about in the podcast I listened to recently. You did an interview with, you go to like a retreat and stand there for like 10 days and like there's no electricity or whatever. It was like, there's like, and another friend of mine actually recommended like doing one of those. And I was like, man, I want to do that. But it's like scheduling that right now with COVID-19 and everything else going on is a little bit difficult. But it was just the same kind of concept. I feel that a lot of times if people could just sit down and look inwards on themselves and then actually use the tools they need, right? Because your mind knows what's broken and it'll tell you what's broken. And then use tools put yourself in some kind of self-hypnosis or use a workbook that's out there that kind of help you get more clarity about where you want to be at. Listen to some of the podcasts that are out there to get some of these things and pay attention to what it is you're feeding your mind. So many times people, they're gaining weight because they're feeding themselves, crap, right? But they forget about what they're putting in their mind can be crap too. So I want to make sure you're conscious about the people you surround yourself with, right? Are they healthy, right? Are these people long-term in my life that are really going to help me get where I wanted to get? Or are these people just here for a short time? So that's something to kind of think about. It was a book I read a while back called Holographic Universe, where like you'll have people where all of a sudden they'll just kind of drop out of your hologram. They're like maybe in your life a lot, and all of a sudden they're just gone. It's like you're on this journey, and it's like there's people that just pop in for a moment, and then there's people that are like, are they on the journey for the long term, or are they actually just going to be here for a pit stop? So just realize that about as you're kind of like focus on as we talk about manifesting and the things you teach as well, is like you can manifest all this stuff, but if you actually don't have a clear road to walk on, you'll never get there. So you have to remove those roadblocks that are there, and as long as you have those roadblocks there, it's going to impede you from getting to where you want to be at in life. There's a woman I worked with recently. I just did a testimonials for last week, and she shared with me she had 20 years of bad relationships. And the relationship she modeled was off her parents because that's all she knew, right? Growing up as a kid. So in a way, subconsciously, it was like saying to herself, we're not going to let you get into a committed relationship and get married, because if you did, you'd hate your life like you witnessed as a child, basically, right? So when that actually happened, and then we switched her mindset about how she felt about committed relationships, and then she met the man of her dreams, who actually she had written down like who she wanted. She had written down that manifestation checklist of who she was looking for in her life 5 years prior, right? And we came in and cleared out the trash, and within 6 months she made this amazing fireman, right? And just like this woman she dated like sports team owners and stuff like that. I mean, she could have any guy that she wanted that's out there,
That is so beautiful. That is so cool.
She chose this at 40 years old. They got married on 11/11. And then shortly after that, she had a baby at 41. So
I love it. And that's the thing. I mean, so many people, they're afraid to dream big and really ask for what they want, because they just automatically assume, or just they have beliefs that are keeping them stuck in the past, like that it's always going to be that way. It's always going to match up with, and it is always going to match up until you decide to change that way of thinking. When you take that risk and you decide to go ahead and get extremely clear on what it is that you are creating, the universe conspires with you, and your subconscious mind conspires with you to make that happen. You don't know the how. You don't necessarily have to know the how. And I think that's where a lot of people also get stuck, is they get stuck on knowing the how. But I mean, there's infinite solutions out there to the problems. We're just only in touch with like a fraction of the information that's available out in the universe. So so you help people to clear up all of the, you call it, BS, maybe, the clutter, the old beliefs,
Take out the trash.
yeah, take out the trash. I love it. Take out the trash. And so that is awesome. And so, so people can maybe even get started on that process with you by maybe enrolling in your free meditation course that you shared. Do you want to tell them a little bit about that?
I created a course called, it's all about inner peace on that side of things. It's building up that strength inside. And I did it because originally I created it for a bunch of Marines. I was going to give a talk to a military base, and they had me come out and talk to them, and I gave it away to them for free. And then I just started giving away to other people. So your listeners or people like to subscribe to that. It's honestly some of my best work in there. It's amazing. So you go in there, you actually have the workbook. You go ahead and go through the workbook, and then it has the meditations with it. And it's really cool. I get emails back from people that have gone through it and taken it and stuff like that. So 100% free.
It's a totally free course.
Totally free course. I think it's got about 8 meditations in there.
Nice. Very nice. Well, I'll have that in the show notes where they can go to, to download that. But it's called Magnetic Meditations. Is that's the name of the program?
I called it that because it's like very similar to like talk about the law of attraction. You're attracting these things in your life at that point. There's instances where, I've sat down with people and I've worked with them, and within, a dream they had of 5 years out, they achieved in like 2 months, and it was like big goals for themselves. This woman had, said to me that she wanted to be a international speaker and go to Ibiza and go to Dubai and get paid to do like her LinkedIn stuff or whatever it was. And she was actually hired by the sheik of the country of Dubai to then teach in that big tower they have over there. I don't know what it's called. And then they went on the yacht that day, and then she flew out to Ibiza after that and hung out for a couple weeks. So it was just like that all of a sudden. And she, credit me, I have a testimony from her just basically saying like, wow, like the stuff I, was dreamed of doing like 5 years from now, I haven't even thought about, within that amount of time. So it's so once you like remove whatever that thing is that's holding you back, and oftentimes you don't know what it is. That's why it's there in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't.
If you knew what it was, then you wouldn't have it.
Wouldn't have fun anymore. So
yeah.
When you sit down and actually do the work and do that inner journey, just get quiet. It's most of the time that people will actually find out. They'll find other things to do besides actually, I call it just doing the work. Doing the work is literally if you just sit down and just be present with yourself and the workbook, answer the questions, listen to meditation. It'll take you an hour, or you could drag it out for the next year. It's totally up to me. Totally up to you about how long you want to, take before you get there.
Yeah.
So it's not my life, it's yours, right?
Yeah. Well, this sounds like a really great way to get on the path toward having that breakthrough. So, wow. Well, I have really thoroughly enjoyed our interview today, and getting to be about that time to wrap up. Do you have any last tips or quotes or anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
So, stay plugged in to, great podcasts like this here, where you get positive reinforcement, you're going in the right direction, fill your mind with the right things. It's like eating that healthy diet. You gotta make sure you do that. And, we're spending more time on this and less time, reading and scrolling through Facebook feeds about, a lot of negative nannies that are out there and negative people. It's just like, stay away from that. Just don't fill your mind with that stuff so much. And people come up to me and they ask me about certain situations that have gone on. I was like, I don't know. I'm too busy working on my dream that I don't have time to focus on other people's nightmares.
Yeah.
So I would say that's
so true.
a piece of advice to kind of take away.
It's so true. I mean, yeah, we can create whatever reality we decide that we're going to focus on. I honestly believe that, and obviously you're a testament to that, and many people are, and so focus on what you want to create, and that's really what it kind of comes down to, and change the things in your mind that have been holding you back from that. And Daryl's got a great website that can help you accomplish that. So I strongly recommend, and I'm going to go and actually check it out myself, checking out the magnetic meditations, which is going to be in the show notes. And so thank you so much for being on the Power of Your Mind. Thank you for listening to Power of Your Mind. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Victoria. Bye.